Have you ever or would you ever say yes to playing a gig just for exposure? Ooh, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because, on one hand, you could get great exposure, which could lead to lots of situations where you're getting paid. But also, are they taking advantage of you by only offering you exposure?
I was thinking that you would do it for free, for the exposure. Sorry, I thought you said exposure.
All right, welcome to Crafty Music Tips, the YouTube channel giving you a bunch of music tips. Whoa, clever name, right? My name is Crafty. Welcome to this video. I just stumbled upon this post on the Cover Band Central Facebook page recently, and I just took a deep dive reading all the comments on this image. Oh, I didn't realize I'd have to pay. I'd have thought with the current stage of your career, you'd be doing this for exposure and to get your name out there. Sadly, neither my rent or bills can be paid in exposures, but I'm happy to do a song for the price I mentioned above in time for your wedding. Let me know if I can help further. That's a bit cheeky. In my opinion, you're being unrealistic with pricing and you'll build a name for yourself much quicker by doing these for free or really cheap just to get your name out there. Talented for sure, but can't see people paying for something like that. The world doesn't owe you a living.
That guy's a dick.
So yeah, it's that age-old debate of should the musician be just so stoked that they're getting a gig and they'll get some exposure, or should they be getting something for their time?
She works hard for the money.
And yes, I must admit, I've had my own experiences, I've got my own feelings, but I couldn't help but just deep dive into reading a bunch of these comments. There's 850 of them, in fact, and I don't remember reading them all. But here, let's just look at just what a few people say. So we got John that says, the world doesn't owe you a living. This is very true, but we don't owe the world our labor, artistic or otherwise, without fair compensation. Very true, John. And Miles says, the only people who get to hear a professional musician play for free are the neighbors who get to hear them when they put in that countless hours of practice. Skilled performers aren't cheap. Cheap performers aren't skilled. Whoa, let's just reiterate that point. It's a very valuable one. Skilled performers aren't cheap. Cheap performers aren't skilled. Bill says, 40 some years ago, our band charged $100 per band member. And it was good money back then. Today, a band playing weddings, parties, etc. for that price might just about cover travel expenses. I'd play for free, but my car wants gasoline, my guitar wants strings, and exposure isn't going to provide that. And Mike says, the people that feel this way ought to spend a day with you loading up, unloading at the gig, setting up, performing, breaking down, loading up again, unloading at home, because they're probably still too ignorant to understand why you don't do it for exposure. And the last one I'll read out says, look, just cover the expenses, equipment costs, lessons, upgrades, training, vehicle costs, personal costs, accommodation, meals, toiletries, outfits, and the 9 flat tires we encountered during the way to the gig. Oh, and John and Dave's expenses too. All right, now I could read a huge bunch more of these comments, but I'll just stop there. Basically, you keep reading and you keep reading, and you've got a lot of people that are on the side of, yeah, you got to pay the musos.
So what do?
We stick it to the man.
And 99% of the time, I would say I would agree. Every so often, though, especially in my experience, where it's just such a pleasure to give your time, whether it's for charity or for somebody that you really care about, it's like a bit of a gift. The gift of music, the gift of your time for whatever it is. But that's not something that I get into a habit of doing extremely regularly, because for me as a full-time musician, when I'm performing, when I'm doing something that is giving the service of performing music, it's to help pay my bills and my mortgage.
You clearly got the skills to pay the bills.
But having said that, there was a time where I wasn't as experienced as what I am now, and I didn't have a mortgage to pay. And so the opportunities that were out there to play, I would just take any of them. And I really got a lot of experience doing that and felt that without that, if I just only held out for money, well, then it would have taken me a lot longer to increase my skill level. And it kind of reminds me of a regular saying that I hear, which is if somebody rings up and asks you to play for exposure, well, then ask them, okay, so the next time that your toilet stops working, are you going to call a plumber up and ask them to fix it just for exposure?
You think you have a crap job?
But if you're really early on as a plumber, well, then you would be getting apprentice rates. And so there's not really anything in the music industry to be able to police, you know, who should be earning what money, what your hourly rate should be, what level of equipment you have, what that is worth to be charging for. And if you're watching this wondering, well, what should I be charging? You know, in a fluctuating music industry that we have, there's not one answer to that.
Answer me!
But there are some steps that you can follow in order to try and figure out what it is that you could be charging. And I give you those steps in an ebook. It's a free download. It's called Actually, How Good Are You? And from that title, it does give you a bunch of steps to be able to try and figure out, well, how good am I? Because I'm sure that a very experienced plumber is going to be charging a lot more than a new, inexperienced plumber.
Are you the plumber?
Yeah!
So yeah, if that sounds like something that'll be helpful for you, I'll leave a link below. It's a pretty easy read. You just go through the chapters and just try and answer whatever the questions are.
That's it! No more questions!
All right, so last thing before I get out of here, I got to ask you, what's the answer to the question for you? Would you play a gig? Would you sing at a gig? Would you perform somewhere just for exposure? And have you done a gig just for exposure before in the past? Leave me a comment below. Let me know, what reason was it? All right, so that's enough of the subject on doing gigs for exposure. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Check out a bunch of the other crafty music tips videos here on this channel. And I'll just sign off by saying, if you have to make a musical decision in your life right now, make the healthy one. Cheers.